Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Shelby Terral, and I'm a PhD candidate in higher education leadership and policy studies at the University of Houston. And I'm also a community college educator, passionate about technology and how it can enhance both our teaching and our students' learning. So a little bit about my background. My research focuses on dual enrollment and college readiness, so particularly how educators foster readiness within systems shaped by policy and institutional priorities. And in both my research and in my classroom, I've become very deeply interested in how AI as a form of digital literacy and how it can support things like reflection, metacognition, and critical thinking when used ethically and intentionally. And today I'd like to share how we can reframe AI not as a threat to learning, but as a tool to prepare students for it, especially those that I'm arguing here that we can reach early through dual enrollment programs. So to begin, I would like to frame the discussion around a brief history on AI's evolution. As we all know, AI in education is not new, right? The idea of creating machines that could think traces all the way back to the 50s when researchers at Dartmouth first coined the term artificial intelligence. And for decades since, AI has evolved quietly in the background through things like developments in machine learning, natural language processing, and data analysis. But in 2022, everything changed. So the public release of ChatGPT democratized AI access in a way that arguably higher education wasn't prepared for. Suddenly, students had access to tools that could summarize, analyze, and even mimic their academic voice. And while, yes, this did spark important conversations around academic integrity, it also revealed something deeper. Higher education wasn't ready to teach AI as a literacy skill. And this is where my work comes in. So I'm not arguing that AI replaces thinking. As an educator, I would never, right? But it's that AI has become part of how we think, how we write, and how we learn. And as educators, we can't just regulate it, right? We have to scaffold it. We have to model it. And to model that critical and ethical use early, especially in spaces like dual enrollment where students are developing both their high school and college identities at the same time, right? These students are simultaneously taking high school courses along with college level courses. So if AI story in education has evolved from automation to augmentation, then I think the real question here is how are we evolving with it as an institution? Because while AI has accelerated how students learn and how we teach, our institutions haven't quite kept the pace. And that gap between innovation and readiness is where the real challenge lies, in our fear, our responsibility, and our ability to adapt with the changing times. So again, when we talk about the introduction of AI into education, I think it's really important to remember that this isn't the first time that higher education has faced like huge technological disruption. And I think a really good example here is when learning management systems such as Blackboard and Canvas were first introduced. When that happened, they fundamentally reshaped how we organized, delivered, and even assessed learning. And back then too, there was resistance, right? There was concerns about control, academic rigor, loss of human connection because of everything, becoming more online. That resonated with most. But ultimately, institutions didn't just adapt to learning management systems, they institutionalized them, right? They provided things like training, policies, and support to ensure that the use of learning management systems remains both effective and ethical, right? So now AI is presenting a very similar moment of transformation, right? But we're not responding with as much structure. There's far less structure, at least from what I'm seeing. Faculty and staff are left to navigate it on their own, often in silence and in fear. And students are receiving very mixed messages about what appropriate use even means. And I think that's the main challenge. We can't just warn against AI, we have to model how to use it and how to use it responsibly. The same way that we model for example, proper source citation, right? We can model critical engagement with AI to advance student learning. So what I'm saying here, this is not just a classroom level issue, right? It's an institutional responsibility. The system that once taught us how to use learning management systems effectively should now be leading the way in helping us teach ethical, reflective AI use. And if we approach it intentionally, AI can be not a threat to learning, but viewed more as a tool to deepen learning. I recently saw a clip talking about AI and someone likened it to having a shovel in the garden. Why would you dig your garden with your hands if you have a shovel, right? If we can model that as an effective tool, not outsourcing our learning, I think that could be revolutionary. So if higher ed hasn't yet built the same structure it has around AI that it once did for learning management adoption, we have to ask ourselves then, where can change even realistically begin? So for me, as a dual enrollment educator, this question is really personal. My students are literally living in two systems simultaneously, in their high school and within the structure of the college that their high school participates with dual enrollment, which makes their classroom a really ideal place to model what ethical, reflective, collaborative AI use actually looks like. So I'm saying here, we can think of dual enrollment as more than just like an access point to college, right? It's a bridge. It's where we can start shaping habits and mindsets early on that will carry into higher education and well beyond. So when I started thinking about how dual enrollment serves as this bridge space, I always come back to my own teaching, of course. I've taught courses where every student that was enrolled in my course was dually enrolled, and others where dually enrolled students were mixed in with, more traditionally aged college student freshmen, right? And while I never single them out as dually enrolled, of course, I always see opportunities to model college level habits and readiness skills in ways that meet them where they're at, right? So for some, that means walking them through where to find credible sources or how to cite them correctly per APA and MLA, because for many, this is their first exposure to those expectations. And for others, maybe it's doing things like helping them develop confidence to take ownership of their learning and to use tools strategically. And now that naturally includes modeling ethical AI use to me. So I ask my students all the time, I ask them, how are you using it? How are you using it creatively? And I show them how to use it as a thinking partner. So we discuss prompts, we evaluate AI's accuracy because we all know that it can hallucinate, right? But students may not be as able to recognize that without that guidance. And we talk about how bias or context can shape any output. And in this way, I'm not just teaching them how to think about using AI, I'm teaching them to think about their thinking, right? Which I'm arguing here aligns directly with Conley's model of college and career readiness. Specifically his third key, which we're going to unpack here in a moment, because I think that this dual enrollment is a good space for that. Because again, these students are navigating high school and college expectations. And as mentioned, AI literacy as college readiness maps directly onto this third key. But before I zoom directly into the third key, I want to zoom out to see the whole theory, all of the keys, so you can see how they work together as a foundation. Oh, yeah. So grounding this conversation here in this framework that maybe many of us are familiar with, Dr. David Conley's 4 Keys to College and Career Readiness model. So what I think is so useful about Conley's model is that it reminds us that readiness isn't just about content knowledge or access. It is much more than that. So it's about how students learn, how they think, as well as how they navigate new systems. And my research uses this model as its conceptual foundation for understanding what college readiness means within my dissertation work. But here I'm centering this third key, the learning skills and techniques key. So again, this framework helps us to see that ethical AI use it's not just a technological skill, right? It's a learning skill. Growingly a learning skill. So building self-awareness, adaptability, and reflection, and how students are engaging within the knowledge process itself. So now let's zoom in on this third key. All right. Oh, it looks like there was something in the chat. Did I miss anything? Oh, okay, no, sorry. I thought I missed a question or something. All right, so Conley's third key here, right? The learning skills and techniques key. So it's all about how students approach and manage their own learning, right? It focuses on regulation, metacognition, and adaptability. And these are skills that are central to how students are going to succeed once they are fully matriculated into college and college level work. And what I think is exciting about AI is that ethical AI use is a direct application of these same skills, right? When students use AI to brainstorm, check for accuracy, refine what doesn't or does fit their voice, and reflects on why, that's metacognition in action, right? They're not outsourcing their learning, they're managing their learning. Dual enrollment classrooms are uniquely positioned to teach this because students are navigating both systems. They can learn how to understand the expectations of both and be like primed for higher ed in a sense, right? And I think that when educators model responsible AI use, they're reinforcing these skills, these key learning skills for students and institutional learning for colleges themselves. So in other words, AI is not replacing the learner at all. It's revealing the learner's process when used reflectively and ethically. And when we scaffold that process early and intentionally, we prepare students not just to use technology ethically, but also to think critically within it and when it's appropriate and inappropriate to use it. So Conley shows us what students need to do, but the next step is understanding how we cultivate those abilities. So my theoretical grounding connects these skills to social learning and metacognitive development through Vygotsky, Bandura, critical digital pedagogy, and thus forming a post-constructivist foundation for teaching AI as digital literacy. So I ground this work in a post-constructivist learning framework, so one that extends beyond just traditional models of a constructivist view by acknowledging how technology itself actively shapes the learning process. So starting with Vygotsky, we understand that learning is a guided social process, right? Students grow through scaffolding and collaborative support within the zone of proximal development. And that idea still holds true, especially when we introduce new tools like AI, which do require careful guidance and reflection. Bandura's social cognitive theory adds another important layer. Students learn through observation, imitation, and reflection. When educators model ethical AI engagement, showing it, students how to question, critique, and refine output, students begin to internalize these behaviors. And post-constructivism pushes this, again, a step further. It asks us to consider technology itself, right, as part of the learning interaction. Knowledge is not only constructed between humans, it's co-constructed between humans, technologies, and contexts. And in a now AI-mediated classroom, meaning is now created through this network. And that means AI has become a co-participant in the learning process, not just a neutral tool. Finally, critical digital pedagogy grounds all of this ethically. It challenges us to make these interactions intentional and reflective, to ensure that students not only learn how to use AI, but also why and when. And it asks educators to hold space for conversations about power, access, and bias in digital systems. So together, these theories form a post-constructivist foundation for teaching ethical AI use as digital literacy. So this framework, it helps students develop all of these skills that are necessary for college, regulation, agency, critical awareness. So you may be now asking, okay, what does this look like in practice? And we'll get there, but first I want to unpack some of the fascinating things that I'm hearing from educators and students about their innovative uses with AI. Okay, let's see. So now I want to come back to my research, connect back to my research and the ongoing conversations that I'm hearing from students and faculty staff across each of the institutions that I belong to. So on the faculty side, I'm hearing a lot of two things at once: creativity and fear. Many are using AI in really innovative ways, like expediting feedback to their students, organizing content, refining their pedagogy, but they're not talking about it openly because they're afraid of being judged or maybe being perceived as unethical for using the same tools that students are being warned against. And on the student side, the story really isn't that much different. My students, I ask them all the time, they're using it very creatively, in their personal lives, but academically speaking, things like summarizing reading, checking for understanding, even generating practice prompts, for some of the exams that we have, for example. They're using it to learn. They're not using it to cheat. I'm not arguing that that's not a problem, right? But I think we're focusing on another problem that is not being as largely addressed, right? But they've also been quick to point out hypocrisy, the students that they're seeing from the institution. They're seeing faculty use AI in innovative ways, similarly what they're doing, but they're being penalized for it. So what this tells me is that both groups are navigating the same uncertainty, right? They're learning how to learn with AI without much support. They're negotiating new ethical ground without a shared institutional framework to guide them. And that's why I designed this scaffolded classroom activity to create a shared structure for critical, transparent, and reflective AI use. So in this next slide, I'm going to walk through a visual of the scaffolded classroom activity that I designed, which I'm happy to share with whoever would like. And it models how educators can guide students through this process. So just a quick summary here. So this captures the essence of the activity, right? So it's a scaffolded progression that mirrors authentic academic inquiry, right? As you can see, each step pushes the students a little bit further into higher order thinking, right? So they begin with their own ideas, then they bring AI into the conversation, not as a replacement, but as a lens to examine their own reasoning. So through comparison, revision, and reflection, students learn to monitor how they think. Again, a skill deeply tied to Conley's third key, that learning skills and techniques key. And by the end, the goal isn't to have a perfectly polished paragraph, right? But the student will leave with more self-confidence. They'll be more self-aware of their learning and be better able to demonstrate their ability to use AI responsibly and critically. So this type of activity does not have to live in one setting. I think that it could be used in a lot of different settings. So I created it for my synchronous and asynchronous general psychology students, but it can easily be adapted to all modalities, all course disciplines. There's flexible ways to scaffold AI literacy and make those conversations just a part of the everyday learning in the classroom. And now I would like to talk a little bit more about how this activity can be modified across discipline and modality. Again, I want to stress that it doesn't have to be limited to certain courses, certain disciplines. Every educator, I think, they play a role in fostering AI literacy, whether you teach English, psychology, biology, right? There's opportunities to embed small scaffolded activities that model ethical AI use. So these can be micro lessons, right? Maybe you integrate them into lectures or even larger standalone assignments. Both of these make AI literacy visible and accessible to students. For example, in a face-to-face setting, you might conduct a live demo where you and your students co-analyze an AI-generated example. You discuss its strengths, maybe some of its biases in real time. In a synchronous setting, maybe you facilitate breakout discussions where students reflect on how AI-assisted drafts differ from their original work. And finally, in asynchronous formats, this can be done maybe through guided discussion boards or something like peer review exercises where students upload their reflections on their own AI use. And across all modalities, the key here is transparency, right? Modeling and scaffolding, not policing. Most of us learned how to write, research, and problem solve long before generative AI existed, and that gives us an incredible advantage. We know what deep thinking looks like, and we can help students get there with these new tools. We can't expect them to know how to do this intuitively, right? And without explicit guidance, AI literacy becomes just another piece of the hidden curriculum of higher education, those hidden expectations that were not modeled for us. So that's why faculty development and shared training, I think, are so important. Institutions must prepare educators to teach these skills intentionally and not leave it just up to chance. So in closing, I want to leave us with the reframing of college readiness for our current environment, our current moment. AI is not the ending of learning as we know it. It's an invitation to rethink what we mean by college readiness in the 21st century. Just as we once prepared students to navigate new technologies like learning management systems, digital research databases, we now have the responsibility to model reflective, ethical AI use. And I think dual enrollment programs, these bridge spaces, are uniquely positioned to lead this shift. And if we reach students early, when habits of learning are still forming, we can almost ensure that those habits are going to ripple upward through higher education. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm happy to take any questions, thoughts, opening the floor. Or wait, I think I have to engage via chat, right? No mics. Let's see. Did I miss any questions? Oh, y'all did not see my slides. Oh my goodness. Oh, I am so sorry. And I was doing that the whole time. My goodness. Let me see. Maybe I can stop sharing and reshare. I don't know what happened there. Oh no. Well, hope it wasn't so horrible to follow along. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Let me retry that. I'm seeing that it's showing. Oh, let's see. Oh, that's a good, I'm so sorry about that, you all. I have my slides available if you'd like to see them. I'm happy to share them. Can you envision how this might be? What was that? Oh goodness, my chat is technology. Here I'm talking about how great it is. Middle school and elementary level students, that's a wonderful question, Kimberly. And I think that, I don't know if I could really speak to elementary, but I think certainly there's research in terms of dual enrollment. There's research looking at how that could be modeled even earlier, at least exposure, right? So I think the same could apply here. I think K-12 educators could certainly start building this into their curriculum. We struggle with like reading levels and math comprehension levels, and I think this could be a unique opportunity to start, modeling and scaffolding, these skills really early. Could you imagine how much efficiency they would be able to gather by the time they reach high school, college? Yes, great question. Oh, they were smaller. Oh, I'm so sorry about that, Beth. Yes, I did upload them there in I uploaded them to the platform, so they are available. Also, if you would like my actual activity, I have a couple resources. So the scaffolded activity, and then I have a couple more resources like to help facilitate the activity. I'm happy to share those. If you want to contact me I have my email here on the slide. Absolutely happy to share those. I teach psychology courses, so I teach general psychology, lifespan, social psychology, and then here in Texas we call it learning frameworks. But it's like a first-year seminar class, and when I designed this activity, I had especially those students in mind and my general psychology students in mind. I have not rolled it out just yet, but I plan to in the spring. I'm excited about it. I got the green light from my department chair. A couple of my colleagues have, shared interest too, but I was waiting to share it out until this session. I wanted to get some feedback. Great questions. Thank you all. Sorry for the smaller view. I wish I would have checked that. Any other questions? I think we have like about a minute. No, I agree, Kimberly. I do. You know, when AI first started, I was a kind of a side observer, wondering how's this going to play out. But the more I've engaged with it with my research, the more I see the utility in it, really, truly. And it needs to be, we need an institutional approach. There's many colleges that are starting to approach AI in the ways that I'm talking about here, but it's not widespread yet. We'll get there though, I think. Yes. Ah, that went so fast. Oh, I'm so excited to join other sessions and see what everybody else is talking about as well. This is so cool. I was telling Divine when we got started that this is really exciting. Thank you so much. I'm very passionate about this. It's a lot of fun to me. And it's blending my teaching and my research and just my personal interests. Super cool. Very happy that Stanford had me. So happy to be here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you. And please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share my resources and pick each other's brains about AI.